Security concerns in the Middle East prompting the State Department to order non-essential U.S. embassy staffers to leave Beirut. The government also urging American citizens in Lebanon and southeastern Turkey to limit their travel. This comes as the Obama administration and Congress debate the possibility of launching military strikes on the neighboring Syria. Meanwhile, we're also getting reports that Russia is boosting its military presence in the eastern Mediterranean, setting another ship into the region. The reports stoking fears of a larger international conflict. Russia has said it's sending ships in primarily to organize a possible evacuation of Russians from Syria. At the same time, President Obama has just wrapped up his trip to the G20 summit in Russia. Earlier meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, he said they had a, quote, candid and constructive conversation about Syria, but still have differences of opinion. President Obama also tried to convince our allies to support his call for action. And of course, President Obama also trying to win support here at home. We learned today that he does intend to address the American people about the crisis in Syria on Tuesday night. Now, recent polls find just 29% are in favor of strikes. 48% are against them, and the rest simply don't know at this point. He'll also face an uphill battle in Congress and the Senate and the House. Just 67 lawmakers say they do support military action in Syria. 167 have come out as against action, and the rest are either undecided or they have not yet made their position publicly clear. The president refuses to say if he will move forward without their support, but he made it clear that he believes a military response is the right thing to do.
And it's tough because people do look to the United States. And the question for the American people is that responsibility they're willing to bear? And I believe that when you have a limited proportional strike like this, not Iraq, not putting boots on the ground, not some long drawn-out affair, not without any risks, but with manageable risks, that we should be willing to bear that responsibility.
So let's debate what the president needs to do next. Alan Colmes is the host of The Alan Colmes Show. Lars Larson is a syndicated radio host with Compass Media Networks. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Hi. You bet.
Alan, what does the president need to say Tuesday night in his address to the American people?
He's got a tough road hill to climb here. He's got Congress against him. He's got most of the American people against him on this. He's got to lay out something. I guess he's got to define what is the Obama doctrine and what are the risks here. And under what circumstances do we do this kind of thing? Why don't we go to the Sudan or Burma? Why don't we go to other places on the globe? Do we go every place there's a tin pot dictator who's doing something that we can't approve of? And by the way, when he said red line, I played numerous times on my radio show exactly what he said. There was enough wiggle room there. He didn't say we're going to war. He said there's going to be a new calculus if there's a red line that's crossed. Yet he's decided, it seems, that he's got to somehow live up to that statement, or otherwise we look weak. I think there's strength in sometimes not acting or getting in the middle of somebody else's civil war.
It's a heavy lift, as Alan has just laid out and as the president himself admitted in St. Petersburg today. Lars, what do you think he needs to say to the American people?
Well, Alan and I are largely on the same page about that, except I'd go even further. This is one of the dangers of having a president who, back when he was a state senator, couldn't make tough decisions, couldn't do it as a U.S. senator, hasn't been able to make tough decisions as a president, and doesn't have a coherent policy, not only toward Syria, but toward the whole Middle East. And look at what we've done in the Middle East. The Middle East seems to be on fire, and America's fingerprints are on a lot of it. In Libya, in Egypt, now in Syria. And so the president's boxed himself into a corner, and any things that he might have been able to do, let's say he'd wanted to aid the rebels, perhaps back before the al-Qaeda elements moved in, when there were perhaps people like the Syrian Free Army that were more moderates. They're only one of three groups now. He didn't do it. In fact, he promised to deliver arms to the rebels, and according to the Wall Street Journal this week, they haven't delivered a single gun.
I only wish the conservatives I wish the conservatives who are against Obama, with whom I agree on this particular issue, were against what really caused Mideast problems, the hornet's nest we created during the Bush administration, going against a country that was not a threat to the United States. I wish there was some consistency there.
Well, let's talk about consistency in terms of going to the United Nations, as President Bush did in order to go into Iraq. President Obama hadn't, it doesn't seem like, even considered going to the United Nations, and he gave a fascinating press conference today in St. Petersburg where he explained, really for the first time, why he is circumventing them. Let's listen to his explanation.
I would greatly prefer working through multilateral channels and through the United Nations to get this done. But ultimately, what I believe in even more deeply, because I think that the security of the world and my particular task, looking out for the national security of the United States, requires that when there's a breach this brazen of a norm this important, and the international community is paralyzed and frozen and doesn't act, then that norm begins to unravel.
Lars, the UN is frozen and paralyzed. Does the president have a point?
That's hogwash. That's pure hogwash.
Why?
Yesterday, Putin's government announced that they believe it's the rebels rather than Assad. Now, the president and Kerry have both said that they have proof that it was Assad. And yesterday, the Russians announced that if they are presented with the proof, they will back a military strike in the Security Council.
And you believe that?
The president... they've thrown down the challenge. If Obama's got it, put it up, throw his cards on the table. But the idea that we're going to say we have the proof, but we aren't going to show it all to the American people, and we're not going to talk about what collateral damage might be done, whether or not Hezbollah has chemical weapons. There are a whole bunch of questions that all the answers you get from the Obama generals and from the Obama administration are, we'll have to talk about that in secret.
Okay.
They don't want to share it with the American public.
Alan, what do you think about that? Does the president owe it to the UN to provide that evidence?
I think Lars is actually correct. This may never happen again when I say that, but he has to go to the UN. He has to go to the Security Council. That's why we have a UN. The UN does a lot of great things it never gets credit for, feeding kids, etc., and conservatives tend to dislike them. But here's a case where the UN could really step in. There's not something else we could do, by the way. They've got 2 million refugees in Syria. We could be humanitarian, do humanitarian aid. There are other ways we could help besides militarily, and that's what I think we ought to be talking about.
But it sounds like the president is saying that he knows that Russia and China would never vote for military intervention, and that they would always come up with some excuse why they don't believe it was the Assad regime.
At least go to the UN and make your case.
But by the way, one thing we should remember, no American president should say he prefers to work through an international body. American presidents should make decisions for America, about the best interests of America. And at this point, we don't have a defined interest there. So I'm just simply taking the president at his word. He'd rather work through the UN. I'd rather American presidents remember that we are a sovereign country. Well, he's using excuses not to go there, even though the Russians have thrown down the gauntlet. Show us the proof, we'll back your move.
Go ahead, Alan. I'll give you the last word.
He's got to work through the UN if he wants to do this properly, I believe. And also, he could have done what he did in Libya, which is follow the War Powers Resolution, strike without advance notice, inform Congress within 48 hours, and then you're out within 90 days and don't have to worry about...
Well, that worked out well in Libya, didn't it?
It didn't work out well. I don't agree that we should have invaded Libya. The point is, he could have done it that way here. Not that I would have supported it, but he chose to go a different route. So it's confusing. What should the process be here?
It's going to be a very intense next few days as we see the president try to make his case here at home. Lars Larson, Alan Colmes, thanks so much. It was fascinating to watch you guys agree.
Alan, glad you agreed with me.
Let's sing Kumbaya.
Yeah, let's do it. In the commercial break. All right, meanwhile, a U.S. judge is now fighting a sentence that he himself handed down after he gave a teacher who was convicted of raping one of his students just 30 days in jail. And a controversial policy spreading through many U.S. schools as some parents start receiving letters saying that their kids are too fat. So, effective motivation or just plain humiliation? We have a fair and balanced debate on that next. And one man now facing charges of kidnapping a woman in Texas as two quick-thinking teenagers noticed the alleged victim pleading for help from the backseat of a car.
My friend sees her going, help me. And then while they're driving off, she's just like hitting that back windshield. And we could see her hand, and she looked frantic. I mean, you can kind of tell when someone looks frantic, and she was hitting that back windshield.